No. Chinese? I can say sure.
Problem to visually explore data.
The
type of data we were trying to explore in very early days was advertising data. And what we wanted to do was build applications to explore data. So we didn't want to have people writing these complex SQL statements to try and make sense out of data. We want to be able to click around and be able to understand more about data. And this project, it first started in 2011. So we open sourced it in late 2012, and the first license we used was GPL, which, if you ever do an open source project, is the worst license you could possibly choose because nobody will use your project. We changed the license to Apache in 2015, and since then there's been a lot more people using Druid. So when you're trying to build an application, when you're trying to power an application, there's a lot of different requirements you have. There's the interactive component. So you want your application to basically feel very snappy, so you can get results back in basically less than a second. You want your application to be real-time, and this is a buzzword that gets thrown around all over the place. To me, real-time just means being able to explore events as soon as they happen. You want your application to be scalable, so we're talking about big data here, so we're talking about trillions of events and petabytes of data. And finally, you want your system powering your application to be multi-tenant, so you can have thousands of concurrent users using an application at the same time. Now, I know that was just a lot of information I threw out there, so I thought maybe I could motivate things with a very quick demo. And I'm going to be doing a live demo, which is definitely maybe going to work. So I have a UI here, and can everyone see this UI? Is it like pretty clear? Okay. Basically, what this UI is showing is edits on Wikipedia. So whenever anyone makes an edit on Wikipedia, there's an event that gets generated. And this event has different attributes. It has a time when the event occurred. It has different attributes like the city or the country where the edit occurred. It has the page of the edit. And it has different properties like the number of characters added, the number of characters deleted, and things like that. So hopefully everyone here is familiar with Wikipedia, right? Cool. Yeah, it got me through school. It was very useful. So let's look at maybe 7 days of data. And there's about 1.3 million edits. And there's different characters added and deleted. So what this UI allows you to do is, let's say we want to look at the time dimension. So we can see how edits are trending across time. And maybe we want to filter this data. So let's only look at articles on Wikipedia, because there's a lot of different types of things you can edit in Wikipedia. So we do this, and we see, okay, now there's about 823,000 edits. So maybe we want to look at just some arbitrary time range, whatever, it doesn't matter. Okay, there's about 500,000 edits here. And let's look at the page dimension. So here, okay, the top page is being edited. 2015 Colorado spring shooting, The Voice season 9. There's a bunch of different pages. Let me increase the font here. And maybe we want to look at only those edits occurring in Singapore, for example. So let's look for Singapore. Let's look at different edits occurring in Singapore. And over this time range we selected, we basically have, I think, a German page about communism. Someone told me earlier this was a German page about communism, so people in Singapore have been editing that. List of cars with non-standard doors. Okay, cool, interesting stuff that's getting edited in Singapore. But we can do more complex analysis. So for each of the top pages being edited, maybe we want to know, okay, who are the top pages editing each of those pages? And we have the IPs of these different users. And maybe we want to look at, let's compare, for example, let's find something interesting to compare. Let's remove Singapore, and let's look at cities. Okay, so this is top pages by cities. Let's look at how different cities are editing pages. So let's remove null, and we can see, okay, top cities doing edits over this arbitrary time range: Tokyo, London, Paris, Toronto, and then Singapore's up there as well. So the purpose of this UI that I'm trying to demonstrate to you, and the purpose of what this Druid system is designed to do, is to arbitrarily explore data. So the ability to slice and dice and visualize and explore data basically without any limits. The scale of the data right now works at trillions, hundreds of trillions of events and hundreds of petabytes of raw data. So it works at pretty big scale. I'm glad the internet worked. I was using the Strata connection, so I was hoping they wouldn't cut it. So I don't have a whole lot of time. I'm kind of just going to go quickly through this. How Druid gets used nowadays, it started out getting used for advertising data. But the applications of the system extend beyond that. It works with network traffic data, website traffic data. It gets used in cloud security companies for operations and to analyze anything basically with a timestamp. So you can see there's a whole lot of companies using Druid today. And if you're interested, you can one of your logos could go up there as well. So I'm going to actually, let's see if I have time for this. I'm going to quickly, very, very quickly go over the, actually no, I don't have time, sorry. 15 minutes is short. So the UI I demo, this is open source. Pretty much everything we build on Druid is open source. If you have data that you want to access through R, or Python, or JSON, or SQL, Druid speaks all these languages. And the community right now, there's about 140 different contributors from many different companies. And if you're interested in checking out this project, I'll give you some links in the last few minutes we have left. Okay, which is right now. If you're interested in learning more about this project, there's a Druid.io you can check out. Druid is a distributed database. It's pretty good for powering applications like the one I just demoed. And I think I have like 2 minutes left, so I can take a couple of really quick questions. Yes?
What's the fundamental difference between Druid and a relational database?
Right, so the question is, what's the difference between Druid and a relational database? I didn't get to go into the architecture because we're very short on time, but Druid is a column-oriented database. It's not a row store like many relational databases are. The reason it's a column-oriented database is purely for performance. With a lot of analytic queries, you basically want to load exactly what pertains to that query. So with a row store, with a relational database, you end up scanning a lot of data that's unnecessary for the query. So if you look at the way that the data space is trending, for analytics, not many people are using relational databases anymore, and that's purely for performance. Key value stores have been getting popular in the last few years, but column stores are sort of the next phase of where all this is going. Yes?
Have you done any application for Twitter?
Yes, actually.
I tried because realized that you can.
Yes.
Yeah, and also to synchronize between, say you have a world event, and
Yes.
then you have like 20 major cities in, like now, COP21 in Paris, and you want to see the different plan and different tweets over 3 hashtags mainly, and then you want to see what is overlapping and etc. I think you know what I mean.
Yeah, actually I have a demo, I don't have time to show it, with actually Twitter data. There's a lot of applications of this technology and of this data. So social media is one of them. There's a lot of business applications of it as well. So that's a very good use case. Yes?
This UI for
Druid, yes.
Yeah, is this part of Druid built in?
It basically works out of the box with Druid. This is an open source UI designed to work with Druid. So the idea behind Druid is you can load some time series data and immediately be able to explore it with the UI. Yes?
One of my clients is unfortunately to transform the data into traditional data.
Yeah.
I want to give a solution to them. Instead of dumping the whole thing, I want to do the data cleaning and setting, and then I want to only the data that is useful for something.
Okay, so Right, so the question was around what happens if you want to transform or migrate only a small portion of my entire data warehouse. Druid is not a system designed to transform data, it's a system designed to query data. There's a lot of other great systems like Spark and Hadoop and other stuff that's great at transforming data. And what you can do is use one of those systems to prepare your data before you load it into Druid. Yeah. If you guys have more questions, I know this was very, very fast. I just want to demo what Druid can do. If you have any questions, I'll be in the back if you want to chat about these stuff more. Thanks, guys. Thank you so much, Fangjin. Next up, we have Scott. Yeah, so it's the team from OA Labs. They'll be talking about, let me see, the deep platform capabilities of OA Labs. So let's welcome the team.
I definitely appreciate the opportunity to speak to you guys tonight. A bit jet lagged from my trip to San Francisco, as you might imagine. It was a very, very long week, but very excited to be here. Very excited to be here. What I want to do today is talk a little bit about some interesting things we're doing from a deep learning perspective, more from a perspective of the application of deep learning as opposed to the deep down and dirty, given the sort of time frame we have today. So I'm Scott Edington, as before. Just a little bit about OA Labs. We're very much focused on building next generation capabilities for our clients. And one of the big numbers I'm most proud about on this slide is the first number that the left-hand corner. It's roughly 67% of the US population that uses one of our capabilities. And the reason why that's certainly near to my heart is not because everyone's using it, so to speak, in the United States, but it's actually having a real meaningful impact both in the risk and fraud space, but also in the propensity side, which I'll talk a little bit about. Okay. But for us, we're very much focused in on primarily two industry verticals. FS, including financial services and banking, as well as the merchant community. And so that's sort of the lens I'm going to couch most of my comments today on. Right. So our approach is one of full life cycle, full innovation life cycle. And the reason why that's important for us is, specifically as I'm speaking to us, certainly a very technical audience, is the technology we develop, the platforms and capabilities we develop, are not just built with the purpose of just developing something cool. Now that's certainly a cool offshoot, but the idea really is around how do we actually solve real industry problems at scale, right? Really important problems. Or how do we actually create new market opportunities for our clients, right? So again, sort of a smorgasbord of various things we've been focused on, anything from creating an innovation strategy for some top US banks to creating some massive systems that are used by the top payments company in the world, to actually developing core tokenization patents that are used right now by probably many of you in this room, HyperPay and Samsung. The thing I stress really for all of us is the fact that while technology is at the heart of most of what we do, that feedback loop is very, very important for us, and the notion of the consumer experience being paramount. And so again, it's with that lens that we go into the trends that often shape, into the global and macro trends that actually shape what we're very much focused on, again, which is around the merchant space and around the financial services and banking sector. So I won't bore you with all the trends, reading them out, because you guys know these probably better than I do, frankly. But the big one on this particular slide that we're very much focused on is the notion of the empowered consumer. Right? So if you look at, certainly if you look at some of our banking clients and some of our merchant clients, for many years they've treated consumers sort of a necessary evil as opposed to the center of the universe. And the reality is that shift is already, that shift's already sailed. The most people today, the empowered consumer today really has to be the center of the universe if you actually want to be, have a viable option to realize viable opportunities in the market space. So again, the demographic shifts, millennials, having more power, more consumer power, certainly, the symbiotic relationships relative to being able to help close the loop between the online space and the brick and mortar space are very, very important. We actually shift on to sort of more near and dear to what we do as a core business. Cybercrime is very, 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 very important, right? So the notion, whether it be the United States Target, which is a very major merchant over the United States, where 7 million accounts were hacked 2 years ago, I guess now, but at this point, all the way to the fact that the U.S. federal government's been hacked several times by nation-state actors as well as private entities, right? Very, very important trend to look at. Invisible payments, what we mean by simply is that, again, going back to the empowered consumer notion, we believe that, as America would say, consumers are actually overpaying. So to be a play on words, the notion being simply that consumers don't want to think about the payment experience, right? They want to be frictionless, they want to be seamless, and frankly, they want to be invisible. So I'm not sure by a show of hands, how many folks actually use Uber? I mean, I certainly use it in San Francisco quite a bit. Most people, at least I'm guilty of this, so is my credit card statement, very clearly shows, I use it without remorse. I don't even think about it anymore, right? Until the reckoning happens when the credit card says like, oh wow, I really spent $600 on Ubers? What am I doing, right? Well, the reason why it's important is because it is very, very seamless. Well, how does it get to be that way, right? How does it get to the point where consumers don't think about the payment experience? They think more that the consumers think more about the actual experience themselves that they're actually achieving. All right, so we're talking about how we do that, how we enable that. And then lastly, the big shift, also near to my heart as an emerging technologist, I'm very much focused on that. The notion here is, what are the new form factors, what are the new things that are going to enable that next generation of specific experiences for the consumer? So we believe at OA Labs that merchants and the banks that don't take advantage of some of these new form factors, some of these enablers, will be woefully left behind. Okay. So what does that mean? Why do we care? Why do I understand all this stuff, right? So a quick snapshot before we get into some demonstrations. From Capability's perspective, we're very much focused on the cyber risk space for obvious reasons for both the emerging community as well as the banks, but also on the business side of things, very much focused on actually how to, let's be honest, drive that bottom line. All right. So the first one I want to speak to you guys about is about compromise detection. And why that's important, again, I mentioned that the notion of the target hack that occurred 2 years ago. Well, obviously they're not alone. Happens quite a bit. Frankly, most of the time when companies are hacked, they don't even share that information, right? They just sort of focus it underneath the rug. Well, as you guys are very much well aware, it no longer takes people with a great amount of expertise to commit these hacks, right? There are now packages online that you can, frankly, have a 10-year-old execute and do quite a bit of damage, right? And so one of the things we worked on at OA Labs, and certainly in our previous lives, is how do we actually create capabilities, again, at scale, where we actually are able to detect, not where a fraudulent card has been used or an old card has been used, credit card has been used, but literally where the merchant itself is the source of the breach. Why is that important? Well, taking a further step back, again, I'm assuming everyone is a consumer, right? Well, when I used to work with Visa, as an example, as a global head of innovation and R&D, our biggest thing we should tell our merchant customers as well as our banks is we're only collectively as strong as the weakest link. Right? We all know it to be true. So one perpetration of fraud, one compromise, frankly, compromises the whole system. And so one of the things we built, in this case, using certain machine learning techniques, is the ability to actually help identify, again, the source of the breach, the merchant location itself, and then help track that through, let's be honest, the broader network. So again, taking a first step back, why it's important to you guys, but from a data perspective is, well, how do you do this at scale and at real time? So if you think about each of the merchant locations being nothing more than, frankly, just a node on the broader network, and each of those nodes presenting, providing massive amounts of data. Again, that data is, in some cases, homogeneous, in some cases heterogeneous, in some cases structured, in some cases semi-structured, unstructured, et cetera, et cetera. How do you actually interrogate that data at massive scale and at real time? Again, at the sub-second level, globally. Okay, so we spend an awful lot of time focusing on both the algorithms as well as the underlying platforms that make us do that at real time. And then, as I mentioned before, from an empowered consumer perspective, again, because most people don't really, I shouldn't say they don't care per se, but most consumers aren't necessarily interested in worrying about risk and fraud. They assume merchants and banks will take care of that for them. They are, however, very much focused on how to get the best experience for them at a given moment in time at a certain location. So the example I always use is, Sky Edington at board meeting in New York City, it's 10 o'clock in the morning, it's a lot different than Skydiving in New York City, 12 o'clock midnight, with some just calling buttons, right? So it's all about context, it's all about understanding exactly what's presented to the consumer at a certain time at the right place, right? What can you do with that data? What can you do with that experience? Both from the perspective of risk, fraud, prevention, and also from the perspective of what is the most likely next transaction to occur. So why is that next transaction? Why is it important that a bank or a merchant know what the next transaction has to be? Well, again, think about how you can actually create a compelling, hyper-personalized, compelling consumer experience based off that data for every individual in this particular room, or every individual archetype in this particular room. Okay. So just use about the time as we say, well, that's all great, nice theory, nice vision, and everything else. But actually, how do we actually get there? What's the online platform that's actually doing all this, serving up all this hyper-personalization, Scott, or all this detection work? So what I want to do is show you very quickly, because I know we're running out of time a little bit, walk very quickly through a platform we developed on behalf of one of our very large banks in the United States, a pretty large bank in the United States, designed to actually do much of the hyper-personalization as well as the fraud detection behind the mission. Hopefully we'll come through this little light, little pretty light in this room. See, part can't hear the volume very much, so I'll narrate for you guys. So basically what you're about to see is very much a high density advanced computational cluster. Some buzzwords in there because it's exciting, at least for me. And what's happening here is we have multi-petabyte data on disk, and certainly up to 20 terabytes worth of in-memory data. Again, why is that important? Well, think about from the perspective of the use case I've already highlighted, right? You actually have every individual located in memory. So imagine taking a whole country, Singapore, or a whole very large city like New York City or San Francisco, placing every single individual in memory, and be able to do very interesting things. So again, from the perspective of propensity modeling, i.e. which next transaction, as well as, well, if we know this next transaction is most likely going to be, wait, this isn't typical at all. He doesn't have a child. Why is he shopping, buying diapers as an example? That doesn't make any sense. Unless, of course, he's visiting his sister who happens to have children at home, as an example, right? So that's sort of the back-end platform. What I want to do now is actually walk you through basically a day in the life of this platform in action. And again, this is, whereas the previous one was built for our banking customers, this particular day in the life episode, again, if you look very carefully, there's an awful lot of use cases that are going to pop up, is meant for one of our retail customers, one of our merchant locations. Okay. So this is our deep platform in action, again, a very large mall location. The idea here simply is that we are not only just identifying the facial recognition, and also voice recognition in certain individuals and what they might be interested in doing. Right? So as a walkthrough, this is going to get very, very quick. We're doing facial recognition, voice recognition, identifying gender, and in some cases, depending on where this is being deployed, you might redact certain information, i.e. people under the age of under 18. And obviously, we're coming up with a certain, what we believe, a certain percentage of possibly what this person happens to be. This next one is an individual who happens to like coffee. But in this case, we recognize that this individual is maybe not necessarily happy. Why isn't he happy? Maybe it's late time of day, maybe he's tired, who knows? But we do know that he happens to be a repeat customer, like we've seen him before, right? And maybe because he's spent a certain amount of money, we're going to go ahead and provide him, concierge service or white glove service, maybe dedicated parking. Maybe we're actually looking at again. Maybe allow a person to not necessarily have to do things like carry his own bags to his car, right? So again, we know exactly where he's parked. We're going to go ahead and split it up for as an example. All things you can do if you don't know who person has to be. So as I replay this again, what I want you to pay attention to is, again, this is all real code. It's actually log files being executed. This is not extraordinary. This is actually very much real. But also, draw you to the bottom right-hand corner. There's no social media feeds. Okay, so actually, again, interrogating massive amounts of data, and all that in at real time to say, okay, we believe it's 98% completion. This woman. Now again, because we're having in Australia, let's say as an example, there's certain privacy regulations we have to adhere to, so we're going to redact that information. So again, this is all happening at scale in real time. That's what marriage is very much working. So if you flip this on its head, right? This is all about propensity, because again, we're talking about the bottom line. Think about what we can do from a fraud perspective, right? Again, we know the woman, she has a child, so the fact that she's buying Pampers is probably not a big deal. The man in this case, you have to know, maybe just lost his job, maybe he's bankrupt, everything else. Why is he buying very, very expensive Rolexes? Right? Maybe he just says, I don't care anymore, and just buy everything, just assume credit with my credit. But more likely than not, maybe someone's actually being a fraud. So again, all these are sort of very quickly running through everything. Our big thing for us is really focused on creating next generation capabilities to enable either market opportunities or solve very, very tough challenges. And typically for us, very much focused in on how do we very, very quickly show value. You know, so most of our engagements, from at least from a 5 weeks perspective, 5 weeks or less. And that does two things. One, gets things done very quickly into market. But then also number two, very quickly we try to fail fast. We're a small startup, we don't have much money to just throw things out there. But also, frankly, within 5 weeks, people, you tend to know based on measured KPIs what's important to customers in the marketplace. And usually within the first 10 days out in the marketplace, we know whether or not it's going to be successful or not. With that, thank you very much for your time.
Maybe you can take one question while Asher, are you here? Asher? Oh yeah, maybe you want to set up now. Anybody else got any question for Scott?
Yeah, so the question, in case you guys didn't hear, was what are the project implications to the spooky stuff in your show? Very. So it's a short answer, right? And what I mean by that simply is that it's varied because, as you guys are probably very much well aware of, depending on where you are on the globe, there are different regulations and policies in place. So as an example, I mentioned it in one example, Australia is very, very strict as it relates to privacy, so is the EU, as an example. The United States, a little less so, but what we're finding, frankly, from an empowered consumer perspective, is most of the millennials that we're running across, some of the market research we've done, is that they're more likely to give up privacy in exchange for convenience, right? So it's probably not a very clean answer for you, but what I'd offer is that the way we built the platform itself, you're able to scale back certain attributes based on where it's being deployed. Thanks for your time, guys. Appreciate it.
Okay, next up we have Asher. He's talking about how to create more data scientists. I think it's a very interesting topic. Let's welcome him.